wind business opportunities in Middle East and North Africa region. And our participant or speakers are today Geoffrey Dupuy from Make Consulting, and actually Mr. Van Son is still missed, and Marco Perona from REST Group. Yeah, and we will do not like question and answer. It will give presentations and from your companies and your activities in MENA region. So after on, we would like to take the questions and make question and answer round after the presentations. So Mr. Geoffrey Dupuy is focused on the market developments, future scenarios, supply chain dynamics, as well as competitive strategies across the wind power value chain, and primarily in the Middle East and Africa region. Geoffrey closely monitors industry participants, markets, policy developments, and technology trends in the region to constantly maintain Make's knowledge base and provide clients with the sharpest and most up-to-date research. Prior to joining Make, Geoffrey worked as a power market analyst and trader with EDF France. He has also worked with renewable energy companies such as SKG, Sangha in India, Vinci Energies in France, and private equity fund Eoxis Platina Partners in the UK. So, Geoffrey, please help your presentation. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for the introduction. I don't know if you guys can hear me well. The microphone is a bit far. Great. So I believe we're a little bit short in terms of person this morning, so I might take a bit more of my time. So that's the good news. So yeah,
few but good.
Sorry? Yeah, okay. Cool. So my name is Geoffrey Dupuy, and I'm a market analyst in Middle East and Africa, working for Make. And today I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview. I'm going to give you an outlook of the region. We're going to talk a little bit about the forecast as well that we do for the next 10 years. So a few words about Make. So Make is a wind industries strategic consulting and research firm. We serve the world leading wind company from all parts of the supply chain, from the supply chain, raw materials, suppliers to IPPs and utilities in general. We basically publish industry, wind energy research, report, analysis, and databases, and we also work in consulting where we offer services on wind farm investment, market assessment, even business and market modeling, as well as offshore wind. We're based in Aarhus in Denmark. This is the main office. This is a Danish company. We also have offices in Hamburg, in Chicago in the US, and Shanghai in China. So quickly, a sample of our clients. We usually work mostly for the biggest player in the wind industry, as you can see here, but we're not going to talk too much about this. So yeah, so the presentation will be basically divided in four. So we're going to talk a little bit about the status of the situation in the Middle East and North Africa at the end of 2014. And then we're going to have a look at the forecast, the numbers for the next 10 years, talk a little bit about the drivers and the buyers in the region, and we're going to provide some key recommendations or some comments to address in order to understand better the market and to make it more attractive, I guess. So in 2014, 430 megawatts were installed in the Middle East North Africa region. This is 100 megawatt less than we have actually forecasted this year. This is due to a 200 megawatt project in Egypt, who were actually installed on the ground, but was not actually grid connected, and we take into account grid connected capacity in our methodology. So we were short for 100 megawatt. Make forecast the MENA region to install about 6.7 gigawatts from 15 to 20. And about 15 gigawatts over the next 10 years. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the numbers further on in the presentation. So here's the situation in 2014. So we have a map and the top four in the markets. So like I said, 430 megawatts in 2014 in Middle East, North Africa region, where 300 megawatts were in Morocco. As you may know, the largest project in Africa called the Tar Fire project, 300 megawatt Tar Fire project, came online last year in 2014. We have the 10 megawatt as well in Algeria, the Ajar project, who came online as well last year. We have a little bit as well in Egypt, and I think it's a bit more than 15 megawatt in Iran that came online. So the interesting story is that North Africa added 410 megawatt compared to Middle East 20 megawatt. Middle East is a very calm region. Was a very calm region in 2014, even in the previous year actually. So in terms of cumulative capacity, we have the region is 1.8 gigawatt at the end of 2014, where Morocco, as you can see on the graph on the left-hand side, is 800 megawatt, and Egypt's about 650. And then after Tunisia didn't add anything last year in 2014, and Iran a little bit. A few words on the market share. It's always interesting to have a look as who is dominating in the region. Here is the percentage on the cumulative capacity on the left-hand side. Gamesa is clearly leading the region. He's enjoying a monopoly in Tunisia. Quasi-monopoly, I think it's 95-96% of the old capacity belongs to Gamesa. Using Gamesa machines. Then we have Siemens in second position, 22%. Siemens came back last year with the 200 megawatt project that was using Siemens machine. So came back in the ranking in good position. Vestas didn't add anything since 2010, if I'm not mistaken. Then we have Alstom. Alstom is active in Morocco right now, is working on a 150 megawatt project, which is under construction and is expected to come online in 2015. And then we have Nordex. Nordex hasn't been, had not had anything in the region since 2003, so hasn't been active in a while in the region. On the left and on the right hand side, sorry, it's a little bit of the asset owner cumulative market share, but I'm not going to talk much more about this as we have this graph on the slide after. So this represents the ownership type breakdown cumulative at the end of 2014. The point here is to show that obviously most of the capacity is state-owned in the region, which is one of the barriers and one of the points that should be maybe improved in the future. We see that 66% of the capacity in the region is state-owned. So yeah, 66% of the 1.8 gigawatt are state-owned. But an interesting story here is the 600 megawatt who are not state-owned. 590 megawatt are in Morocco. So basically Algeria, Egypt, and Tunisia, all the projects in those three countries are 100% state-owned. We have seen things change last year and the last couple of years, and this is something that has been addressed, and I think the countries are understood that they need to open the door to private investors, and that the capital needs to come from private investors. We had a very interesting presentation yesterday from Algeria, Tunisia, and Jordan, where they were explaining the new regulatory framework for renewable energy, where they were explaining that they're going to divide different tenders for private investors, as well as through EPC tenders for Yemen, etc. So this is something interesting that we look forward to see in the next few years. So now, if you look at the wind resources, so this map, basically is just to talk about the best wind development. So I'm gonna introduce you our methodology for our forecast that is usually based on 5 pillars. Let's say we have the first one, which is obviously the wind resources. The second one is the macro condition. We have regulatory conditions. We have track records and transmission system. So I'm not going to talk about transmission system much today, but I'm going to introduce you to the wind resources. I guess everybody is kind of aware of the wind resources in the region, but it's always good to have a reminder and see where are the best wind development zones. So basically the brown area is where the wind is higher than 6.5 in average, 6.5 meter per second in average a year. But we know that Western Sahara and the West Coast Sea are the best development zone, and where we see most, the biggest development in the region. So here is starting the methodology for the forecast. So like I explained, we have the macro conditions. This is a very simplified way, obviously, of our methodology that takes into account quantitative analysis and qualitative analysis. So it's a scale from 0 to 4, where 4 is the best conditions. And so basically the darker the color, the better the position the country is in. You guys are going to find the methodology of this at the end of the presentation. I think we're going to share the material, or you can see my email address, and it'll be a pleasure for me to share it to understand better. So the macro conditions includes GDP growth, power demand, demand versus supply. We have political stability and all the different macro criteria in the region. So we can see that, I mean, basically, the countries have pretty much recovered, in our opinion. We say pretty much because it's always a long process, very slow process. But in our opinion, Morocco is one of the most, let's say, stable, with very, very high growth. And so we see this country as the best position in this, but all of them are like the third. Not so much in Middle East, though. Middle East is very quiet. But we all know that those countries need generation capacity. They all rely on fuel for electricity generation. So those countries are very good condition in macro, in terms of micro criteria for a forecast. So those countries are very good position. If you look at the regulatory conditions now, same methodology from 0 to 4 for the best. The darker the color, the better the position the country is in. So these regulatory conditions take into account, we have the targets, we have the regulatory framework, renewable energy law, tenders, auctions, and everything. So for this one, we found Egypt the best in the best condition. As we all know, Egypt has been very, very active last year. Beginning of 2015 has been crazy active compared to the others. I mean, crazy active as subjective in the region, as we all know. So we found Egypt the best in this. We have Morocco as well in second position. Morocco was a very, very good regulatory framework in place with two different, with the law, the renewable energy law we open to private investors, plus the tenders. We are waiting for the 850 megawatt tenders result during the year. So we have Morocco in second, and then we have Algeria, which has double its targets and with very ambitious and a little bit more active than we could have seen before, as well as Tunisia. Tunisia is actually, so that was actually a very interesting presentation yesterday from, I don't remember his name, from a person from the Tunisian Energy Ministry, giving us an update on the Tunisian renewable energy law. And he was actually saying that the law was actually voting yesterday, so it should come anytime soon, I would say. So we're very looking forward to see what is going to happen, and especially the different capacity awarded for the private investors, as well as the EPC tenders and everything. Now, if we have a look at the track record, so that's the third criteria. So the track record takes into account the overall capacity. We have the order pipeline, the order backlog, and etc. So we can see that, I mean, despite ambitious targets, despite good macro condition with the demand increasing a lot, GDP growth going up all the time, we see that there's no much more happening yet. That is very beginning. Compared to those countries like China or Brazil or something, it seems very, 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 very small. But we see something happening a little bit, and once again we see Morocco and Egypt coming in first. I mean, they are the most active. They are the one who have the most operational capacity today, and they are the most promiscuous in the region yet so far. So those are the two countries that are leading this track record conditions. There's 19 countries in the region and only 7 have operational capacity today, totaling 1.8 gigawatts. It's actually the second last, right before Sub-Saharan Africa. So, like I said, this is very, very small, but we see things moving, and it's very, very good and positive to see that things are happening now in the region. So here's the numbers. According to the different methodology that I've presented before, obviously those numbers are from the actual methodology that we use, proper model and everything. But I just wanted you guys to have a look at our methodology to understand better where the numbers are from. So we can see clearly that the region is going to be led by Egypt and Morocco. In 2015, we expect the region to grow by 90% year on year. It's going to double, actually, almost, mostly due to, thanks to Jordan. Actually, yesterday as well, within the same session as Algeria and Tunisia, for the people who were here, we learned a lot about Jordan. We were aware that some projects were under construction and some in the pipeline. We have a little bit less than 200 megawatts we're supposed to come online in 2015, which is a great news for Jordan. So Jordan is going to be driving the growth in 15, along with Egypt and Morocco. We expect few countries to come online, a few projects to come online in the next years, and we expect the region to have a 10% growth on average from 15 to 24 as well. So if we look at those numbers, we can see as well that Saudi Arabia is present. We have had a lot of doubt about Saudi Arabia, as everyone, I guess. We have downgraded the forecast a couple of times. We are actually still in a wait-and-see situation, as you guys might be aware. Saudi Arabia had a very, very ambitious target. I would say in 2014, beginning of 15, they have postponed this target for, I think it was from 32 to 40. And then we had, the king passed away. They have disbanded the KCARE, which is the Renewable Energy and Nuclear Energy Committee. We're supposed to push the industry in the country. So nowadays, as you guys may be aware, we are in a very wait-and-see situation. We just want to see if the king is going to be involved in the renewable energy. We believe that some of the committee might be created in order to push the renewable energy. Saudi Arabia has a great resources. They're gonna have to save oil at some point. We're sure of that, and they're gonna develop the renewable energy. That's for sure. The only question is when are they gonna do that? So we have postponed a little bit our forecast, our numbers. We know that Saudi Electric Company is working a little bit on this along with Saudi Aramco. We believe a little bit, a pilot project, I would say. So it's going to take some time, but we believe that at some point Saudi Arabia will take off and join the others and might lead the region. So Jordan is going to lead the region until then, as we believe. Actually, Israel as well has accelerated things in 14. There's in October 15 a conference in Jerusalem, and I think the fact that they're hosting a conference in a country has accelerated things. I know that the government has accelerated the permitting process for more than 400 megawatt project, and we expect few megawatt. I don't remember properly. I think it's a little bit less than 15 megawatt to come online in 15. According to the association and the energy ministry over there. So yeah, basically those countries are the ones who are going to lead the region for the next 10 years. And if we have a look at the cumulative number, so we expect the region to grow steadily with a 25% CAGR from 14 to 24, with about 15 gigawatt of new capacity. Actually a little bit more, I can see here. 17 megawatt at the end of 2024. Once again, led by Egypt, Morocco. We do believe that Morocco is going to reach the target. They have a 2022 gigawatt target. They are on pace with complying with this. So we're going to see how it looks, but we do believe that they might be able to reach this target. We have a little bit more doubt about Egypt, though. Egypt is moving very, very fast, but if I remember well, they have a 7.2 gigawatt target for wind for 2020. Which seems very, very ambitious, which is good because it's motivating the country, the industry, and it's a very positive sign. Especially after the Siemens announcement a few weeks back about installing 2 gigawatt capacity, as you guys are aware, and the blade facility is sending positive signals to industry. So it's a very good news. So we do believe that they're going to grow significantly, but we have some doubt about the 7.2 gigawatt target to be reached in 2020. So now if we look at a few buyers and drivers that I have mentioned through the presentation. So we have the political instability, I think, is one of the barriers over there. It has been better, as we talked about, but this is obvious. Egypt, before 2014, Egypt didn't do anything since 2011. When I say didn't do anything, I mean they didn't install, connected anything in the grid. So we know this, the political stability impacts a lot the wind energy in the region and every other economic area, of course, as well. The low electricity prices as well. I mean, we know wind is going down and it's cheaper and cheaper. In some countries already competitive, but we have, I think, the low electricity prices don't make the price very, very competitive in every market. Like we're going to talk after maybe a little bit more with the key recommendation. As we mentioned as well, the market is very limited to foreign and private players. This is one of the barriers as well that might impact and impede the growth in the region. The fact that the country has limited experience in renewable energy development, I think they need help in developing a proper and adequate renewable energy framework. And one of the biggest barriers as well, as I can see for wind energy, is the insufficient or the non-existent transmission grid. I mean, we all know that the wind resources are always located very far from the actual consuming points. So a lot of investment in wind, in transmission system are needed in the region. A few drivers, just to be positive. We know there is a good drivers over there for the wind. The first is the good wind resource. We know the region has a good wind resource, and some spots have very, very good wind resources. The country needs generation capacity. Some countries like Egypt, I would say, they're actually already lacking generation capacity. I mean, the generation capacity is lower than the peak demand as well. So I mean, they have been experiencing widespread shortages. So they're already missing capacity right now, and the demand is increasing very, very fast. So they need, and we know that large-scale wind energy projects are doable in a very short time. So this is a criteria that push the growth in the region, definitely. They want to diversify the generation mix as well, like we heard yesterday for Algeria or Tunisia. Depending if they export fossil fuel or if they import, is not the same motivation. But at the end of the day, that this is a criteria that push winds a lot. Either they want to be independent in electricity, I mean, in the electricity generation, or they just want to save the oil for themselves or for export, which actually makes sense, as we know that it's not unlimited. And obviously, the wind industry represents hundreds of jobs, and it's a huge opportunity for every country to build a proper industry in the country. So we believe that this is a very, very important driver as well for the wind energy. And if we have a look at the last night, so this is like key recommendations. This is based on the drivers and drivers and buyers, obviously. So it's a little bit repetitive, but this is what we say. So we believe that some target markets lacks policy mechanisms. Like I said, they are very ambitious target. They are very motivated, but we believe that the government intervention is necessary in this kind of market, emerging kind of markets, to establish concrete support and to create like some kind of stable investment area. This is what investors are looking for: stable and profitable environment. We talk quickly as well, briefly, about the electricity prices. We know that it might be a problem. Like I said, I mean, wind going down, but I think the reform of an electricity pricing mechanism might be a good idea at some point in order to make the wind more competitive and compared to other conventional energy sources. Open the market to private investors. We saw the numbers. It's very, very state-owned right now. I mean, this is in process. We have seen changes, so this is a very good sign. So we don't want to give lessons to the countries. We just want to help to make it the countries better. So those recommendations are from our own. But yeah, we have seen changes. I mean, new liberalization policies are being implemented in order to attract new investors. I mean, they have understood that the capital needs to come from private investors in order to make the market grow faster, I would say. We need everything. Like in Egypt, for example, I think they have kind of understood a good way to attract investors and to make the market very attractive. We have, as you guys are aware, we have the EPC tenders, which is a certain capacity for OEM, and then we have a private section divided in competitive bidding and in feed-in tariff for smaller projects like less than 50 megawatt. So this kind of framework is a very good one, and I think is attracting everyone, and it should be a very framework for the future. And like we talked about as well, the transmission constraint that may impede growth. We know it's a very, very big problem in the countries. The transmission system are like either insufficient or even non-existent. So this is this is a big barrier, and this is a problem that should be addressed. And I mean, once again, they are doing it, and it takes time, but this is something we should be aware of as a barrier in the region. So I think I'm done with the presentation. Here's the methodology that you guys can see at the end of the presentation. I'm not going to go through this; it's a little bit boring. But you guys, I'm going to share the presentation, or you send me an email, and I'll be free to share the presentation. So I'm done. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Geoffrey. As next speaker, we have Mr. Marco Perona, is responsible for the transactional business in RES for the EMEA and Asia Pacific regions. He had joined RES as Director of Business Development for the RES Met entity, coming from EOXIS and IPP platform of the PE fund Platina Partners that he has started up and for which he has in charge of as Global Business and Corporate Development Director. Previously, Marco has worked for Albioma, a French-quoted IPP, as Corporate Development Director in charge for the renewable business expansion. In the first part of his career, Marco covered several roles in strategy, business development, M&A, for multinational branded product groups. Marco is graded in economics and business administration. Marco, please, the presentation.
Thank you for the nice introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. So the intention of my presentation was really to present a couple of topics to generate a discussion and question. So after a few slides of presentation of RES, I would do that. And really please, I will not spend a lot of time on each slide, but I would very much welcome comments and questions. So a few words on RES. RES is a 30 years old family-owned company with 21 offices in the world. We're today more than 1,000 employees, and we've been established 140 years ago by a family called Sir Rocco McAlpine, who then diversified 30 years ago into the renewable business. We have today and over time, so over those 30 years, developed and built roughly 9 gigawatts of wind all around Europe. We have today, as we speak, roughly 1 gigawatt of projects that are either permitted or under construction. And we also have more than 1 gigawatt of assets, ours or third parties, under management. We are an integrated operator, so we start from greenfield development, going through engineering and implementation, construction. We take care of the financing. We own assets, and as I was saying, we operate both assets that we own and assets of third parties. In terms of business segments, our stronghold is for sure wind, onshore and offshore. We're also active in solar PV, and we recently, or maybe not that recently, but I will show that later, started to work on a couple of new technology, especially storage and DSM, that stands for demand-side management. We also develop and build the transmission lines, high voltage transmission lines, and as I already said, asset management. That's our presence worldwide. So we are in the Americas, you can see Canada, United States, and Chile, and then the rest of the world. I will not name all the countries you can see. I guess here the message is that RES is a worldwide player because we are spread all over the world. At the same time, we're not in many countries, and the reason is because we are long-term investors, and so we're very careful in selecting the geography where we want to invest, and when we decide to invest, we stay there for the long term. So in relation to this conference, of course, what is relevant is Egypt and some work that we have done on Saudi Arabia. I would not mention Turkey because I know that it's covered in other session. So one of the topics that I want to just briefly present is a study that we have done for the Saudi Arabian authorities, and of course was an interested study, but also because we felt that everybody was identifying Saudi Arabia as the hotspot for solar. That is for sure true, but at the same time people forget that the potential for wind in Saudi is also huge. So we have an internal department who take care of wind assessment and wind modeling. So what they have done, they use a 3-tier mesoscale map adjusted with real data. And we have designed a map of the wind potential in Saudi. With today's machine, we consider that a project is economically viable even with low wind speed at 6 meters per second. And therefore, you can see the potential, if you start from that assumption, is absolutely huge. Then what we have done is we have said, okay, well, that's the maximum potential, but let's take out mountains. So we have taken out all more than 2,000 meters relief. Then we said, okay, let's remove all the places where it's difficult to build the wind turbine because it's too steep. And even after removing that, what you can see, you can read the numbers. Class 1, 2, 3, if you put all together, the potential for Saudi Arabia is absolutely phenomenal. So even though then a small fraction of those can be actually built, still we're talking of hundreds of gigawatts. That, by the way, fits also pretty well with the existing, but also the planned grid connection lines that the Saudi authorities are planning to develop and build in the future years. A second topic for discussion in relation to this region is the activity we are been having in Egypt, where we've been selected for what is called the Gabal El Zayt wind farm, or in non-Egyptian terms, the Gulf of Suez BO tender. The project is as Geoffrey also was showing, in a very windy area, so we're talking about more than 9 meters per second. And what is interesting is this tender is a little bit peculiar, so I think it's interesting. Just a little bit of history. It started in 2009 with 70 companies pre-qualified. Then out of that, out of that, 10 has been shortlisted. Of course, then because of the political situation in Egypt, the process has been slowed down for a couple of years. But the idea, and I will come back to the slide later, the idea here is that the 10 shortlisted bidders would have conducted a joint development. 2013 and part of 15 has been used to prepare bidding docs because they're pretty extensive. And now we are at the point where we're about to bid. So the bid is forecasted for the April 19, and there are 7 companies that will be bidding. So ourselves and the others that you can see on the slide. Planning then is for the Egyptian authorities. Unfortunately, I'm not here today, but I've been interested to exchange with them. The planning is to have the selection of the preferred bidder in 2015, and then get to the financing and to the start of construction over 2015 and 16. So why is it interesting? As I was saying, because that's a kind of unusual development process. So basically the 10 preferred bidders put money in a common pot and share the cost for the development of the studies. So both on the wind side, geological and topographic study, but also EIA and bird studies. All of that has been done jointly on a site that was preset, and this will generate one winner. So what is interesting is that, of course, this put the competitive edge more on the financing, engineering, and construction, because all that is related to development is joint. So everybody will have the same, basically, set of data. So then it's the use of the data that each one will do, and their, of course, competitiveness on the financing and construction cost that will generate the winning bid. As I was saying, the land is allocated. So by the National Renewable Energy Organization in Egypt, there is a grid line of roughly 300 kilometers that is being built by the Egyptian authorities, and the offtake will be granted by the Ministry of Finance with a 20 years PPA. The bid is let's say South African style or Italian style of bid. That is to say, you have to have all the documents ready before the bidding. So it's people is of course bidding for lowest PPA price, but you need to be compliant with all the project documents. Also provide comments and markup to both the PPA, EPC term sheet, any other kind of project documents, and also provide a detailed financial model output and also commitment letters from lenders. Last but not least, there are a couple of bonds that need to be placed, 5 million before the bid and then 40 million for the winning bidder. Third topic that I think it's potentially interesting for, I mean in general, but for that region in particular, is storage. Just a little bit of background. When we're talking of storage today, we're not actually talking about storage for trading. Summary here in bylaws are high. Actually, the energy storage today is not competitive yet to do that. Will come in some year. But so today, the business model is more around providing the grid with ancillary services. And so RES started a few years ago to do plain R&D on the storage. As you see here, we're analyzed over 100 storage company and or technologies. And today I think we are one of the few companies in the world who actually have operational projects in storage. So we started with the US. We are now about to implement the same kind of strategy in Europe. Meaning, as you say here in the US, we have 8 megawatts already operational. You can also see the picture. And we have 50 megawatts under construction, and we're working on another couple of 100 megawatts. So I would say that in the US, we are in a kind of business as usual situation now for storage. Then I think it's a pretty peculiar stage for storage in the world. So, as I was saying, that's for me topics for question and discussion. So, please.
Thank you very much, Marco. So, are there any questions to our speakers at first? Yes?
Hello, okay, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. My name is Calver, come from FGH, a German electrical engineering company. I've got some questions to both presenters. When you are active in the markets, what are you confronted with some grid code requirements that we know from European countries as well? Because I think, especially when you are in grids where you have not so stable systems, then the requirements must be even higher than in our systems in Europe, for example.
So you say when you are in a country where grid is not stable?
In these countries where your systems are not so stable because of there are not so large transmission systems, then I guess you must be confronted with higher requirements than we have in Europe, for example.
Well, from our side, I would say that's a prerequisite to enter in a country and to enter in a project. So, you know, if we consider that the grid is not stable enough in a country, but well, I think it's a difficult situation to foresee where the grid is not stable in a country. It's more foreseeable where the grid is not stable in a region. So in that case, for us, it's probably a prerequisite for not going there.
Okay, but just to continue, are there any fixed grid code requirements in these countries?
Sorry, in which countries?
For example, in Morocco or in Egypt. Or
well, I'm not an expert of grid code compliance in Morocco, but that's something that we deal with. Our engineering team, and our work is to comply with the grid code. So, and we never faced any kind of problem. I would say that even that's talking for RES, that's part of our strengths, of our knowledge, to have a very knowledgeable technical team who can deal with the different grid code. That's as I was showing in the map. We're in 14 countries there. And some of them, of course, have grid code and rules that are very, very different.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Same as Marco, I'm not sure I would be able to answer properly, as we're doing more market analysis on policy levels and yeah, following the country at that level. But that said, this is actually something we might get into it more because, I mean, I was in South Africa a few months back, and we know that there's great problems over there, and this is something we're going to look into it in the near future, because there's a demand. So we're gonna work a little bit more on this, but I wouldn't be able to answer properly. I'm not an expert in grid, so I'm sorry as well.
Okay, just let me give the last comment, because
Sure.
as we heard already yesterday with some presentation from Tejas, every country that is developing their decentralized power systems will be confronted with some stability problems from the grid, and so it must be considered, in my opinion, by the very first start to look after the grid code requirements. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the grid stability, when renewables start to be, when intermittent energy start to be an important part of the grid, is for sure a topic. At the same time, we have examples of countries who have integrated quite a few amount of intermittent energy already. Thinking about Ireland, Germany, and Spain, are the three more than 30%, and sometimes they get up to 60–70% at a certain given point of the day or the week of wind and solar, and and the grid have worked well without any problem. So there is a work to do on the grid, that's for sure. But I don't see this as a concern, but just as a thing that need to be done. And even more in Ireland, for example, there's an island, right? So with a closed system, but still they're managing pretty well. So for sure it's a topic, but I don't see this as a concern, but more as a potential for business, actually.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any additional questions? Please.
Hi, my name is Sinan. Thank you for the presentations. I actually have a question about the technology. You've been speaking about how now the energy could be collected from lower wind powers, wind speed. How do you think the technology is advancing there? Is it really fast, or are we going to see a lot of changes in the type of projects that's going to be taken on this year and next year? How do you see it evolving? So, thank you.
Well, I guess what I meant is that we have seen huge and fast development in wind turbine size and size of the rotor in the last years. And so actually if you look at wind potential maps for years down the line, and now they're completely different because newer machine opens areas that were completely unexploitable 4 years ago. So, and of course, all these areas still have to be taken. Let's say, still have to be developed, and still their projects still have to be. Well, I'm showing Saudi where there is nothing apart one wind farm in Aqaba that is in the north, where I was showing that in the southern eastern part there is a lot of potential, but it was just an example. There are many other countries where you can apply the same reasoning. So I think that with the machine we have today already, there is a lot of project development to be undertaken, and of course the technology is still evolving. Somebody was mentioning this morning a new 8 megawatt machine for offshore that has just been announced. So I don't know. I can't tell you where the size will stop, but it will continue.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions? Actually, I would like to ask, because if we have some experts from this region, because of the bankability of these regions and the rating of the countries, and I mean, you could show there in Egypt, in Morocco, they are tendering, and also the government is behind all this projects and tender process with governmental guarantees. How is it actually especially for the turbine manufacturer, who's especially European manufacturers, and are also European banks all like also with German Hermes, etc., so on? Are they also giving support there in these countries?
Yeah, you're right. That's a concern in those countries. This is why we talk about like political stability. Indeed, I mean, obviously, the more stable the country, the better the finances, I would say, right? So we have seen an evolution of obviously the creation of fund, especially like Africa or Middle East fund that could help this kind of development. But also that's a concern for the European bank or OEM to go to these countries, and this is why we are focused on the stability. Let's say, I mean, we have seen those countries the more stable, and then it creates a little bit of confidence, and then the European are like more confident to go in the country. Okay, obviously, and then they use their own finance to come. So yeah, we just need the stability of the country, see how it goes, and then hopefully the creation of this African and Middle East fund, like the African Clean Development Bank, and all this institution created in the area should help develop. And yeah, I mean, I think we're going there. That's the thing. I don't know. I mean, we're not confronted to this, so it's a little bit more difficult for us as we're just seeing as analysts. But I think companies like Marcos, when they're like working with local people, it's easier to see what's going on and how to deal with this and how people, feels about the country. Is it okay to go? Is it difficult to get finance? So I think maybe Marco will add a bit more about this. But
yeah, I think I think it depends on the answer depends on the country. Not all the country of the region are have the same say can present the same country stability. So I think in many countries still a challenge for commercial banks, for European commercial banks to actually lend. So we see more development banks like EIB or EBRD. Talking about Europe, and then of course the international instance like IFC or OPIC. Commercial banks is mainly local. Another interesting thing, I think, what I'm start to see is you're probably all aware about this yieldco that are pumping up here and there. Most of them, for the time being, had restriction for investing in OECD countries, but they know that there are at least a couple that are going to be launched hopefully in the next months, who will be targeting emerging markets or non-OECD ones. So this should provide also another way of financing, relatively cheap financing for this country.
Thank you very much. Yeah, if there's no additional questions, so I would like to close the session. Thank you very much to the speakers again.
Thank you.
Thank you.